By the end of the 80s, the whole satanic panic around metal had dissipated. And with the 90s, music started to take a far more serious turn. And it's hard to think of the 90s without thinking about Marilyn Manson, who brought a much more intellectual vibe, it seems, to shock rock. And so I've come to Fort Lauderdale, of all places, which is actually where Marilyn got his start. And I'm meeting with the founding guitarist, Daisy Berkowitz, because I want to ask him, where did the whole philosophy behind Marilyn Manson come from?
We weren't going into shock rock with an idea of, here's how we're going to shock people. I was just happy doing weird music with a concept and a theme, something more artistic and conceptual than other people were doing. In the early 90s, nobody had any theatricality. Nobody had a great show. We had a theatrical show that was not only theatrical and visual, but weird.
When I saw Marilyn, of course, I looked at it and I said, okay, that generation needs an Alice. That's who Marilyn was. Marilyn was that generation's Alice. The videos with Marilyn were the scariest part. His videos were truly disturbing. I mean, I was shocked by the videos.
Record me with your fist. Want me to save the world. I'm just a little girl.
Marilyn Manson took the whole shock rock thing about as far as it could possibly go before you have to start arresting people. The image was just absolutely every parent's worst nightmare. He was ghoulish, he was scary, he was violent, he was anti-religious, he was apparently an actual minister in some sort of Satanist church.
You have a guy here who's very sharp, very smart, very imaginative. Kiss and Alice just wanted people to buy. They were far more all-American. Marilyn Manson says that what he really wants the kids to do is to think.
I like to experiment with people's fears, see what motivates them, what scares them. And at the same time, I also mock the whole sensationalism of it all anyways. Sometimes it seems like I'm trying to be shocking, but I'm mocking the fact that people take it so shocking. Shock point's never been the point, and hopefully people who like our music can learn from that. You know, that's the most that I can try and do, is to make people think.
Marilyn was a lot more vocal off stage against his opposition of church and religion, and he has his ideas, and he is not afraid to use them. I think in the past, the shock rockers were nuisances to the right, but I think Marilyn Manson was one of the first real challenges.
The tearing up of the Bible became part of the show. How were people reacting to that?
It's offensive. Sure, it's offensive. We know that. But it's just a book. If there was any message in doing it, that was it. And to point out that truly nothing is sacred and morality is ambiguous.
Marilyn Manson appreciated that the best kind of publicity he could get, particularly amongst rebellious teens, were these protesters. These protesters were as much a part of what Marilyn Manson was about as the kids inside the venue.
It fuels the careers of shock rock performers to have people criticizing them. That's where their music starts, is in feeling like outcasts and feeling like outsiders and connecting with people who also feel like outsiders, because they say, look, I'm famous, I have this great job as a rock star, but I'm just like you. I'm misunderstood.
Goth culture was really big in the early 90s because kids that liked the music stayed inside, and they were the ostracized kids. They were the kids that didn't have clubs. And Marilyn Manson feels like more of a clubhouse vibe. You know, I get it. I know what's going on. And you get it too. And we're laughing at people who think it's awful and terrible because they don't get it. So there's a stronger following. There's like a psychic following.
Despite the controversy surrounding Marilyn Manson's music and performance, by the late 90s, he had sold over 20 million records, gained a huge international fan base, and received widespread critical acclaim. But then there was one controversy that came along that even Marilyn couldn't handle.
I was watching the news, CNN at the time, and I joked at first thinking I would get blamed for it, and then who knew that it would be so ridiculous, because the initial reports, they said that these kids were wearing makeup and they were dressed like me. That was like their first report.
It was almost like, you know, the breaking news, and then there'd be a picture of Marilyn Manson for no obvious reason with shock rocker Marilyn Manson. And then there'd be, were they goths? And it was like he was put in the dock as basically being responsible for this appalling Columbine tragedy.
One of the reasons that Manson became a target was he was already visible in the media. So people could point to him and a broad swath of the audience would know exactly who they were talking about.
I'm not surprised that I was blamed because I have an image that isn't altogether pleasant. But I think the saddest and most disgusting part of the whole event was the media coverage, documenting the grief and filming the funerals. Then they turn around and start indicting entertainment. I think the most gruesome entertainment that I've seen was their coverage.
The problem, Brian said, was don't look at me, it's the media. I thought you were the Antichrist of rock and roll. I thought you were scary. I thought you were big and bad. Now he's complaining that people are coming to him. He should have said something like, yeah, see how influential I can be? If he's going to be vilified, why should he say, oh, don't look at me like that. Don't make me a scapegoat. Marilyn Manson, you're supposed to be.
I don't think he'd prepared himself for the visceral cynicism and hatred that was sort of unleashed by the scapegoating. You know, this really, I think, really shook him. And he just sort of disappeared.